Here's what we're going to have done by the end of today's video. Hey guys, welcome back for another week of recreating mechanics in Unreal Engine 5. This week we got a suggestion from a viewer that wanted to see the Hitman mechanic recreated, where when you kill someone, you can take their outfit. And so we're not going to walk through the stealth benefits of this mechanic, but we are going to walk through how you can actually make this mechanic where you actually swap clothing. So let's get into it. So first of all, we need to get a character that has an outfit that is swappable. All right, so I'm gonna hop into Fab. I already found a nice little asset pack for free, this adventure character guy. And this comes with a skeleton. Actually, it comes with a bunch of skeletal meshes. Each of these clothing articles, so the jeans, the boots, the shirt, the jacket, they're also all skeletal meshes, and they all are of the same skeleton. So they follow the same skeleton as this skeletal mesh right here. And so that lets us hide or add as many skeletal meshes that exist in this pack as we want. With this free asset pack, we only have so many skeletal meshes that they give us for free. So we're going to use what we have. So I just already downloaded this to my project and I added it. And when I added it, it shows up as this man folder. And if we check out his mesh, we have a few different skeletal meshes that are available to us. So we have this sort of naked mesh. We have a mesh just with jeans. We have a skeletal mesh that is fully clothed. But we want our third-person character, we want our player character to just start out naked, let's say. If we had more clothing outfits to work with, we would have our character already fully clothed. But since we're kind of limited in the assets that we have from this pack, I'm going to work with what we've got. So our character is going to be naked by default, and then we are going to pick up clothes along the way. Luckily for us, this skeleton actually works pretty well with our animation blueprint that we already have set up with our third-person character. So if I go into my third-person character and I change the skeletal mesh from Quinn to, I think it's called Man, and we'll choose Man Full 1. Okay, so we can see that he looks fine with the animation blueprint that we have set here. I think he uses the same structure as the Unreal Engine skeleton. So let's just see that he's working okay with our animation blueprint, and he is. Great, perfect. Okay, cool. Let's say we wanted him to start fully clothed. So how would we add clothes to this character? Let's say I want him to start already clothed, but not using that skeletal mesh that already has the preset skeletal mesh clothing assets. So if I add another skeletal mesh to our character, so let's call this skeletal mesh, let's say pants. So let's say I just add the pants as the skeletal mesh asset. Okay, so check this out. The pants are just sort of there. They don't actually follow the animation blueprint. They're just sort of staying stagnant. So if I, instead of setting the anim class to ABP unarmed, because I don't really want every single clothing asset to be running an animation blueprint. So instead of doing that, if I instead go into my construction script and I say, hey pants, set leader pose component to our main mesh. This actually conforms the pants to follow the animation of the mesh that it is parented to. So now if I press play, you can see that the pants are indeed following the animation correctly. But we don't want our character to start out with this stuff, but we do want to have as many assets available to us up here as we will have clothing. So let's say I want to pick up a pair of pants, and I want to pick up a shirt, and I want to pick up different shoes. In Hitman, it doesn't quite work like that. You just pick up an entire outfit. We have available to us a shirt mesh, a jacket, shoes. I believe we have some sort of bag, like a hip bag, and then we also have like a mask. So we want to add as many skeletal meshes as there are articles of clothing that we have available to us. For each of these skeletal meshes, I am just gonna have all of their skeletal mesh assets set to nothing by default. And I think it's just not updating correctly right now. Maybe if I refresh my blueprint here, he'll be naked again. There we go. Okay. But what I do want to do is in my construction script, I want all of my skeletal mesh assets to follow the same pose as my main skeletal mesh asset, the main character skeletal mesh. So I'm just going to add all of these right in here. So now whenever I do add a mesh, a skeletal mesh to these references here, they will follow the animation of the main skeletal mesh. We've got all of my skeletal meshes just sort of waiting to be assigned a skeletal mesh asset. And so now we can pick up an outfit from a downed enemy. So now we actually have to take down an enemy and create some sort of system where my character can pick up their clothes. All right, so we need to make an enemy that looks like this. It needs to have an outfit that my third-person character can actually steal. So I'm going to recreate this. My dropkick attack from one of my first videos that I'll link in the description, it takes down an enemy, sends them into ragdoll, and so I want the same thing to happen here, just so that we can say, okay, the enemy is now down, so now we should be able to take their outfit. I'm just going to quickly make a base enemy class that my third-person character can search for, so that whenever it's doing a dropkick, it can just take down that enemy. Let's just quickly go through that. I'm going to make a new blueprint class. I'm going to make it a type character. I'll call it BP enemy base, or how about just base enemy? Okay. Now I'm gonna walk you through how to make this Hitman enemy. So I'm going to delete this. It's probably gonna break something, but that's okay. So I'm gonna make a new character blueprint again. I'll call it BP Hitman enemy. All right. And I am going to reparent this to my base enemy class. Okay. Perfect. I am going to assign the skeletal mesh on this Hitman enemy to my SK man full. Here it is. All right, and I'm going to make his animation blueprint ABP unarmed. And just like with my third-person character, I'm just going to move him down 88 units, rotate him negative 90 units. All right, he's looking good. And now we need to actually give him clothes. So let's do the same thing that we did with our third-person character, where we assign the character a bunch of different skeletal meshes. Don't worry about these error messages for now, we're going to fix that. I'm just going to grab all of these skeletal meshes that I made on my third-person character, going to copy paste them into my Hitman enemy class, and I'm going to make the base mesh here the parent of all those skeletal meshes. And now, instead of leaving them blank, we're going to assign each of them a skeletal mesh. So for bag, we'll give it the bag mesh. For mask, we'll give it the mask mesh. I think it's called balaclava. There we go. For the pants, we'll give it the pants mesh. Shirt will be the pullover mesh. For the shoes, we'll just grab the shoes mesh. And finally, for the jacket, we'll grab the jacket mesh. There we go. And then for all of these, I just need to reset their positioning. Bam and bam. Alright, so now all of these skeletal meshes are just sort of floating there. So we're going to copy paste what we've got in our third person characters construction script. And we're going to paste that right into our Hitman enemies construction script. This works because all the meshes are named the exact same name as I've named them in the third person character. And now we're looking good. All these meshes are following the animation of the main mesh, or main skeletal mesh. And so now we need to actually take our character down when we do a dropkick. So the dropkick attack is something that we made in one of my first videos. I'll include an image to the thumbnail here, and I'll add a link in the description. I'm not going to go over how I implemented that in this video, but I'm just going to sort of make our implementation of that from that video work for this instance. So back in our third person character, we have a lot of messed up things here. So for our check for enemy event, we used to look for a certain kind of class. So we're going to cast to base enemy. Our Hitman enemy is of type base enemy. It's a child of base enemy, so this cast that we're doing here will actually work. It'll detect our Hitman enemy, and instead of detecting a Hitman enemy, we'll just search for a base enemy. Alright, cool. And we'll do the same thing here. Base enemy, just to fix these error messages. Okay. We've got that all figured out, and now if we try to dropkick our enemy, oops, I have to put the enemy in the level first, duh. So we've got our enemy in the level now, and if I try to dropkick him, you'll see that his collisions are messed up. So he just sort of falls to the floor. He doesn't do that ragdoll that we had in our previous video. So to fix that, if I just grab my mesh, go to its collision settings, and I'll choose custom here, and instead of query only, I'll choose collision enabled. And I'm just gonna set ignore for this camera collision response here so that it doesn't block our camera weirdly. Now if we try this again, bam, our character is ragdolling. And so when I dropkick him, I should now create some logic that lets us swap outfits with him, and when I swap outfits with him, I should take all his clothes and he should become naked like me. So in my last video, I actually made it so that in my animation blueprint, the character rotates its head towards where its camera is looking, but the problem is that my enemy class doesn't have a camera, and so he's always going to be looking at 0, 0, 0. So instead, I'm going to do a little side quest right now where the enemy character is always looking at the player. So let's quickly take care of that. If I go into my animation blueprint, it's just ABP unarmed. I've got this look at location, so I just need to be setting that. Let's just do it on tick. So in my Hitman enemy, let's grab our event tick, and I'm actually going to also get the event begin play, and I'm doing something in third person character where I'm just getting the animation blueprint instance, and since my enemy is using the same exact animation blueprint, I can just copy paste this info here. I'll promote this to a variable, and now on tick I will just set my look at location. And just real quick and dirty, since I just want the enemy to look at player 1 for now. I'm just going to get player controller, get pawn. And I'll just get its location, get actor location. And that should take care of that. So if I pop into the level, we've got our enemy constantly looking at our character. So there's our side quest. We're good. With that out of the way, we can continue to work on our Hitman change outfits mechanic. So what we need to do first is create a widget that pops up when we are near our downed enemy. When the enemy falls over, when we dropkick him, we should see a little widget pop up that prompts us to change outfits. So let's make a new widget, and let's say user interface, widget blueprint. I'll make it a user widget, and I will just call it WB outfit pop-up, and I'm going to make this just a canvas panel I'll add here. And if I look back at the footage from the actual Hitman game, I can see that the widget sort of pops up as a button. So if you're using controller, it would say like something like A to change outfits, or if you're using keyboard, it would say something like E to change outfits. I'm just going to make it E to change outfits for now. I won't check whether I'm using a gamepad or a keyboard. So let's just make a button, and I'll attach some text to that button. I'm going to anchor my button to the bottom of the screen, and I'll reset its position. And I'm going to set its alignment to 0.5 and 0.5 to center it on that anchor. And now I'll just push it up a little bit. So I'll say boost it up by, let's say, 100 units. Now we can size our button to the content, so it'll be as big as the text that's inside of it. I'll change the text to E, and let me just change the color, the background color, to something like a dark gray. Perfect. I don't really care too much about this design. I just want it to look obvious. And now we have to have some sort of text next to this that explains what pressing E does. So let's put this button into a horizontal box. Plop this in here, and then I'll plop my button in the horizontal box. Since I didn't restructure my horizontal blocks, but I anchored my button to the bottom of the screen, I have to do the same thing for my horizontal box. So I'll just quickly do that. And in our horizontal box, let's add some more text. I'm actually going to add another button, just so we can clearly see our text. So this button will be called E, and this button will be called text. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Okay, and I'll change this text to change outfit. We want to make this a little bit smaller and change up the formatting. So let's grab this button here, and let's change its background color to something like, I guess we can just let's do black, but let's change the opacity, something like 0.5. And then I'm going to remove its outline. So to remove its outline, I'm just going to go into this normal style, and from rounded box, well, I'm not going to change rounded box. In the outline settings, I'll change the width to 0. And then I think I'll make the corner radius maybe something crazy like that. And I'll do a half height radius so it's sort of cylindrical. And I still want to get rid of this outline here. So, alright, so to get rid of this outline here, I'm just going to, in my normal style, change the tint of the outline to the same as the tint in my background color. Just do that real quick. You can design your thing however you want it to. The design for us really doesn't matter in this case because we just want to get the functionality down. I will change my text down to something like 18. And for the button, it's actually that size because this button has default padding. So I'm actually going to change up this padding. You can do something like that. And I won't have it fill the whole box. I'll just have it centered. And then I'm going to add some padding to the left. I can either add padding to the left of my text button, or I can have padding to the right of my E button. I think I'll just do that. Okay, that looks decent. And there we go, pretty good. I think I might change the sizing a little bit, but we're going to go with this for now. Whenever my player is near a downed enemy, this widget should pop up to prompt us, let us know that we can take their outfit. Now that that's done, let's actually make this widget appear. I want to close this down. I'll go into Hitman Enemy. I am going to activate something when he goes down. So in my third person character, I'm going to find the logic that gets called when the enemy gets knocked over. I believe it lives inside of a function in my third person character called detect enemy for ragdoll. So this function is bound to an event. It's bound to my right foot, left foot, and right leg collision capsules here. So during the dropkick animation, these capsules get activated, and when they detect an enemy, it calls this function here, detect enemy for ragdoll. And so what I'll do is I'll call a function on the enemy that activates a, let's say, box collision, that whenever my player enters that box collision, adds the widget to our screen. So first things first, let's create a box collision on our Hitman enemy that gets activated when the enemy goes down. So I'm going to, on the mesh, add a box collision. I'll call this outfit change detection. I'm going to center this guy and resize it a little bit, just so that when I'm close enough to this enemy, I should be able to change outfits. Okay, in its default collision settings, I am going to say no to that. I'll make a custom collision preset, and I just want to overlap pawn. By default, I want collision enabled to be off, so no collision. I'll activate that. I'll make it a query only once the enemy gets sent into ragdoll. Let's go back into our third person character. And so since I'm searching for base enemy and not Hitman enemy, I can't directly say, hey, activate this collision capsule here. So instead what I'm going to do is, on my base enemy class, I am going to make an overridable event called downed, enemy downed maybe. All right. So by default in the parent class, it just won't do anything. But now in my Hitman enemy, in my event graph, I can actually look for events enemy downed, and now I can override this event. If I ever add some functionality to the parent, like let's say I want to print hello here, or enemy downed, oops, enemy down. So if I want to add that functionality there for whatever reason, now if I call the parent function of enemy downed, it'll print that string. I'll leave that there for now. Okay, so enemy goes down, and what do I want to happen? I want the outfit change detection. I want to set its collision to query only. So from no collision to query only. All right. I'll comment this out and I'll say, when downed, enemy activates outfit change collision volume. Perfect. So now we got to call this event from our third person character. So over in base enemy, I'll say enemy downed. Perfect. And this will call the function, even though it says target is base enemy here, this will actually call the function on our Hitman enemy. So to prove that, let's make a breakpoint here on the Hitman enemy override event here. And if I hit play and I go like that, perfect. Now we see this event, this overridden event, gets called on Hitman Enemy. We've enabled collision on our box when the enemy goes down. So now we actually have to detect when the third-person character is within this box collision, and then once we do that, then we can actually have the outfit change widget pop up. So let's handle detecting the third-person character first. From my outfit change detection volume, I will do on component begin overlap, and I'll also spawn in one of these on component end overlap events. So when my third person character goes into this box collision, and when my third person character leaves this box collision, we will perform a certain function on our third person character. So let's go make that function. Let's just make a new function down here. Let's call it add widget to screen. Okay, and what this will do is we will create widget from class, and we will create that widget we made earlier, WB outfit pop-up, and we'll add this to viewport. Now we actually have to call this function. So back in Hitman Enemy, we'll say, okay, our third person character overlapped our box collision. Let's call add widget to screen. I'll make this more descriptive. I'm gonna call this toggle outfit change widget, and then I'll actually create an input parameter called enable, and if we've enabled it, we'll create it, and if we are disabling it, we'll remove it. So I think what I'll actually do is I'll save this as a variable. So I will call this outfit change widget, and when I'm disabling it, I'll just grab the reference and I will say remove from parent. That adds the widget to garbage collection, and Unreal will delete it whenever it feels like it. I'll also dereference this just in case. Perfect. And I'll just comment this toggle outfit change widget on and off. I could also just have this on my character at all times and then toggle its visibility, but this method works as well. So back in my Hitman Enemy, I'll say enable when my character first goes into that box collision, and then I'll call this again, but say disable. So let's see if this works. If I go run into my enemy, I won't see the widget pop up because he hasn't been downed yet. I'll down him, and now it actually, it's up at all times. So that is no bueno. I'm getting some errors here. So I think instead of doing it this way, instead of creating a widget and then deleting it over and over again, I'll just make a widget of this type that always exists on the character, and I'll just set its visibility to on and off. So let's do it that way instead. I'm going to copy this stuff, and then in my begin play area, at the very end, I am going to say create widget of class, do my outfit pop-up class. I'll add this to the viewport, and then I'll also promote this to a variable. I already have my variable here, so I'll just set my variable. What I'm also going to do in my widget, I'm going to set it to invisible by default. So if I hit outfit pop-up and set visibility up here, if I set this to hidden, you can still preview it in our designer panel, but it will not be visible in our third person character. And I'll test that out right now. Perfect, it's hidden. And I'll show you if I keep this visible and I spawn in, we can see it, and we don't want that. So I'm going to leave this as hidden. Perfect. Okay. So now, back in our toggle outfit change widget, if we're enabling the widget, we'll grab a reference to it, and we will set the visibility to visible. And a nice little nifty hack we can do is we can get a select node off of this visibility enumeration, and we can just plug enable in for the wildcard index. And so if we're false, we will hide the widget, and if we're true, we'll make the widget visible. And just to avoid any weird complications in the future, I'm also going to do something here. These buttons here, since they're buttons, we have to change their visibility to non-hit testable, because if I ever have my mouse cursor showing up on the screen, we don't want to be able to interact with these buttons. They're not interactable, they should just be informational only. I was just using buttons because they have easily modifiable styles. So I've got that down. Let's see what happens when we take our enemy down. All right, I'm in his box collision. Now if I leave it, the widget disappears. And so that is the functionality that we wanted. So perfect. So now that we have this pop-up coming up, now we actually need to create that functionality where I can pick up his outfit and get dressed. So let's first start out with just being able to get dressed. Then we can get an animation for kneeling down and picking up the outfit. So if we want a quick and dirty way of doing this, in our event graph in our third person character, if I just grab keyboard E, let's see here, keyboard E, and from keyboard E, whenever I press it, I perform a sphere trace. And for the sphere trace, we can just get our actor's location and set the radius to something like 100. I'll draw a debug just so you can see what this actually does. If I start spamming E right here, you can see I'm performing this trace around myself. And so if we detect our enemy, if the enemy lives inside of this sphere trace, then we can perform our pickup action. So I'm just gonna turn that off. I am first of all going to check if we even registered a hit. For actors to ignore, I am going to add myself, because I don't want to be able to detect myself in the trace. And now off of this hit, I can check to see if the hit actor was of type base enemy. And if that's true, then we will pick up this enemy's clothing. And in my base enemy, I will make another overridable function called interact. So let's go into our base enemy and let's make another custom event. Let's call it interact. And I will just override this in my Hitman enemy class. So I'll print a string that says interacted with enemy. All right. And now in my Hitman enemy class, I will override this function, event interact, and here is where we can give our third person character this enemy's clothing. We need to do a couple things. We need to first make our enemy naked, and then 2, we need to give our third person character what the enemy was currently wearing. So we'll first make a function that I'll call get enemy clothing. Okay, and this function will return all of what the Hitman enemy is wearing. So the pants, mask, bag, shoes, shirt, jacket. So if I get the skeletal mesh asset from each of these, and then I can return each of these, I can return each of these as a skeletal mesh asset. So I'll name these accordingly. So I'll call one pants, the other one will be shirt. Next up is jacket. We've got shoes, and finally we've got bag. Okay, and I'll just link all these up. Okay. So when I interact with the enemy. I'll call the interact node. Alright, so instead of casting for my base enemy, I'm going to search if it's a Hitman enemy. I'm going to search if it's a Hitman enemy because I only want to change the outfit if it's of this type of enemy. I can still call it interact event, but from my Hitman enemy, I'm first going to call get enemy clothing, and that will give me all of my skeletal mesh assets. And from that, I can set my third-person character's skeletal mesh assets using these. So let's make a function to do that, just so it's nice and clean. I'll call set new outfit function. I'll call it set new outfit function, and I'll grab all of my skeletal mesh assets. I'm going to make an array from them. And for each of these, I need to get the skeletal mesh assets that I was grabbing from my enemy character. So I need to pass those in. Let's pass them also in as an array. I will make an array from these. Just realized that I didn't grab the mask skeletal mesh for my enemy character, so let's do that real quick. Back in our third person character, let's pass this array in. So it's an array of skeletal mesh objects. Alright, perfect. Let's order these the same way that I ordered the array in here. So we got pants, shirt, jacket, shoes, bag, mask. Let's reorder this. Pants and mask. Alright, so now these are all in the same order. I'll grab my meshes array that I passed in, and I will get a copy using the index array index from here. So for the first index of my character's skeletal mesh array, first index would be my pants. I'll get the first index of this array, which is also pants in this case because we ordered it that way. And I will say set skeletal mesh asset. And we'll pass this in. Let's see if that works. So I'll down this guy, oops, and I'm gonna press E, and nothing happened. So let's see what's going on in our sphere trace. I'll add a breakpoint here. I'll see what it's detecting. The hit actor is some static mesh component for some reason. We're using the wrong, actually, sphere trace node in general. We need to use sphere trace for objects. So we'll still ignore ourselves. And then under object types, we'll make an array, and we just want to search for pawn. All the other settings can be the same. And so we're checking for object types that are pawn. And let me just double check that in my Hitman enemy, the mesh is of type pawn, which it looks like it is, so that's good. That should work. So let's test this out. Let's see if this works. Alright, and I'll hit E, and there we go. So I'm grabbing his clothes, but he's still clothed, so what I have to do is on this interact event in my Hitman enemy, I have to disrobe him. Let's make a function on here that makes all of his skeletal meshes invisible. So let's say toggle outfit. Oops, I didn't need to capitalize F. There we go. I'm going to grab all of his skeletal meshes here, all of his clothing skeletal mesh components, and I'll just make an array of this to make things easy for myself. And for each of these, I will say set skeletal mesh asset, and I'll just leave it empty. So let's go back into our graph, and in event interact, I'll call toggle outfit. Actually, I'll call it remove outfit. Okay. So let's test this out. Dropkick you. Now press E, and there we go. Now I took his clothes and he's naked. I should get rid of this change outfit. Yeah, so I need to disable changing outfit once I already grab this outfit. Otherwise I can get naked again if I press E. So once we call this interact event, let's actually disable the collisions on our box collision. So that's actually pretty easy. I'll just grab outfit change detection and I will say set collision enabled to no collision. And so that should fix that. Let's grab this. Okay, so my widget disappeared, but I can still grab his clothes because my character is performing that sphere trace. I need to make some kind of system that checks whether or not our character even has clothes on him. So let's do this. So when we do this sphere trace, we can check if there even is an outfit to pick up by checking our outfit change widget and then checking its visibility. So if the visibility is visible, then we'll do this sphere trace. So now let's see if we fix that issue. Great, now I can't spam E and get naked again. We want to make things look a little better than just picking up the clothes like that and it just appearing. We want some sort of animation to go with it. Before I get to that, let's actually make this a legitimate input action. So instead of just saying, hey, debug keyboard E, let's go to our input mapping context. Well, this I made in a previous video. I called it IMC combat. Let's actually just call this IMC player controls, because now we're doing more than just combat actions. In my input mapping context, I am going to make a new input action. So I'm going to duplicate my sprint action, and I will call this action interact. I don't want to just call it change outfit. So let's get that. Let me zoom in here. IA interact. Perfect. And let's do keyboard E to interact, and we'll do gamepad button left, so X on Xbox and square on PlayStation to interact. Right now we don't have a way to detect whether or not we're using keyboard or gamepad, so to change this E to, let's say, a square or an X, we would need to create some kind of other function to do that, but that is something for another video. So let's keep it where it's at right now. So instead of using this E event, I'm going to search for my IA interact function, and on started, we will try doing this sphere trace. I'm just going to make sure that this is working fine, just as it was before. And it is. Okay, perfect. Now we just need to grab some animation to make this transition from naked to clothed a little better. So let's grab an animation. I'm going to hop over to Mixamo. I already found an animation I like, and I kind of adjusted its settings a tiny bit. I think I'm just going to start it probably around here, and then I'll blend it out maybe here as he's sort of examining it. I went over how to do this in a previous video. I'm going to kind of fast forward through it, but I already have this Ybot character in my project, and then I have a plugin that maps this Mixamo animation to the Unreal skeleton. So I'm going to download this without skin. And now that I have that, I'm going to open up my Mixamo to UE converter. I'm going to find that folder actually. All I have to do is move this pickup animation into the incoming FBX folder from my Mixamo converter, and that will pop up in my converter right here. I'll convert it, and now I should see the remapped animation in my outgoing FBX folder. I am going to plop this into my project, I'll put it into my Mixamo folder, in my animations, my Ybot anims, and I'll drag it in. I'll map this to my Ybot skeleton, and I will retarget this to my Quinn skeleton. So it was called pickup UE. I'll export this animation and I'll put it in my retargeted animations folder. Perfect. Let's just check it out to make sure everything looks okay. Perfect. Okay. Going to enable root motion on this, I think, because I don't want the character to be able to move while they're picking this up. So that's good. We're going to make it a montage. I'll just rename this to pickup, and I'll create anim montage. I'll call it AM pickup. I'll throw this in my montages folder. All right. And on third person character, I will, if all of these things succeed and we detect that we're hitting an enemy, I will play a montage from my mesh, and I will play pickup montage. And I don't want to grab the enemy's clothing right away as soon as I play the montage. I actually want it to pick it up at a certain time in the animation. And instead of making a whole anim notify class, all I have to do really is go into my montage and just create some new notify. So I'll just call it montage notify, and I want to pick up the clothes right as he grabs right there. So I'll just name this something like change outfit. You don't have to give it a name. And what's going to happen is as soon as that notify gets passed in the montage, it should call the rest of these things. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to hit E, and there we go. Perfect. Now I don't want the character to examine his hand for that long. So I am going to blend out that animation a little bit sooner. So let's first of all, let's start the animation sooner. And I'm also going to ease in and ease out the animation. So first of all, I'm going to click this down here and I'll start the animation. Maybe I'll start it like 0.15 seconds into it. Maybe a little bit further in, 1/4 of a second into it. Okay, and then I'll blend out, or I'll end it maybe after 2 seconds. Let's see. Even sooner. How about 1.5 seconds? Needs to be more than that. 1.75. I need to move my montage notify again. Okay, let's end it after a second, let's say. Let's see how that looks. Nope, needs longer than that. 1.5 seconds. And let me just change the location of our montage notify. Needs to be like right here. Perfect. And let's speed up the animation by maybe like 1/4. Maybe 1/2. Okay, that's better. Now let's check this out. Perfect. That looks pretty good. Let's check it out again. I'm going to test this out on gamepad now. I'm going to hit X. There we go. That's it. We got our Hitman change outfit mechanic. I wish I had more outfits to choose from, but I think it's great that we've got this free asset that we can work from. And I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's how it kind of looks in the actual Hitman games. And so, yeah, thank you again to our viewer who suggested this mechanic. It's pretty fun. I haven't done this before. For the rest of you, if you'd like to see me recreate another mechanic that you like from one of your favorite games, let me know in the comments. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.